Archbishop Desmond Tutu has urged all of us to vote with our heads. But in South Africa, voting is all about heart. So this week, we get to the heart of exactly who some of these leaders are who want us to send them to the Union Building.
I was a freedom fighter. I escaped death in many times.
You weren't allowed to feel sorry for yourself in my family.
I'm their role model. They wish to be like Julius Malema.
This is Checkpoint, and I'm Nkepile Mabuse.
This is where Julius Malema famously scored a G for woodwork when he matriculated in 2001.
I want to thank you very much. Let us go to our classes and talk.
But teachers and children at Motlaganeng Senior Secondary School in Limpopo sing his praises for what they see as his more admirable attributes.
He is able to stand firm in everything, in every challenge that he is facing. He can stand firm.
Do you think he will be a good president, Julius Malema?
Absolutely, yes.
We are told that history was among his favorite subjects. But it wasn't his marks that got him noticed by teacher Silas Paladi.
Qualities of leadership, he showed them since he started in grade 8. In grade 8, he was elected as the member of the SRC, or the Learner Representative Council.
In fact, Malema, who reportedly joined the ANC at the age of 9, blames his terrible academic performance at school on his political activities. Malema became national president of COSAS in 2001, a stepping stone to the position of ANC Youth League leader. 7 years later, his progress over years is proudly displayed in the principal's office. His childhood friend and former political ally, Boy Mamabolo, says what led to Malema's rise also contributed to his demise.
Would fight for free education, delivery of textbooks and the learner support material and so on. So you need somebody very radical, and he was the only person who could do that or perform that particular task. So that radicalism elevated to the Youth League. Obviously, it didn't please leaders of the ANC.
One of Malema's first prominent targets was a then unpopular President Thabo Mbeki.
Don't come here with that white tendency. Not here.
Soon thereafter,
you can do it somewhere
everyone was
Not
fair
here.
game.
Eventually, his sharp tongue took aim at the leader he once pledged to kill for.
We have seen under President Zuma democracy being replaced with dictatorship.
His critics say it is Malema himself who is a dictator.
He's very brutal. He doesn't believe in democracy. He's one person who likes to impose leaders. And that is why when he left the ANC, he left alone. About 2 or 3 people followed him. He abuses his power. For sure, you understand that when he led the Youth League, most of the comrades were not happy about his leadership style.
So that's the most stupid argument. Those are the people that I defeated in the Youth League democratically.
Following his expulsion from the ANC in 2012, Malema soon found himself in legal and financial trouble.
He has been charged with racketeering and fraud, and his assets were attached to recover the 16 million rand he allegedly owes the taxman.
But 18 months later, he had reinvented himself, swapping the company of rebel rousers for radical thinkers. Questions remain around Malema's credibility and whether he is genuine about uplifting the poor or more focused on using politics to uplift himself.
Malema dismisses his critics as weak political enemies.
All of them admire me in their own ways. So I'm their role model. So how can they have a role model of a dictator? So they wish to be like Julius Malema.
He's often accused of being a turncoat, someone who would say or do whatever is necessary to accumulate power. His U-turn on Zuma is often cited as one such example. He says he was misinformed.
We thought he was a man of the people who enjoys listening to ordinary masses. The opposite was the case.
Ironically, Malema now says he too is the victim of a political conspiracy.
I think the criminal case is almost over because the co-accused have been discharged, which proved that there was no prima facie evidence. Discharged means the case will never be reinstated. It's worse. It's worse. It's a clear evidence. If people doubted of any political conspiracy, here is the evidence.
Some have branded him a modern-day Mugabe, whose policies will most certainly destroy South Africa.
We are not getting into a boxing ring to become number 2. We want to be number 1. And once we take over government, we want common ownership of the means of production, including the land of South Africa. It is that land and common ownership of the means of production which will end racism, which will end poverty, which will end inequality and underemployment of our people.
It is rhetoric that has helped many before him ascend to high office, but that is yet to help end poverty in Africa.
Climbing the rungs of South Africa's political ladder was never Helen Zille's ambition as a young girl. But even during her school days at St. Mary's High in Johannesburg, Zille was politically conscientized.
She was different, and I think that difference stems from the fact that her parents came from Europe. They were real intellectuals, and I think there was lots of discussion in the home about philosophies and thoughts.
Veteran journalist Alistair Sparks knew Zille from an early age, first as her neighbour and later as her boss at the Rand Daily Mail.
Her parents were from Germany. Her mother was Jewish. All of her mother's family were extinguished, were killed in the Holocaust.
Because of their experiences of being persecuted, both my parents really hated any form of discrimination and any form of racism. And they also didn't tolerate self-indulgence. You weren't allowed to feel sorry for yourself in my family.
Even at school, she was feared.
She was quite intimidating, even to the staff.
I did engage very directly, I think, and it's good to know in retrospect that you intimidated some of your teachers, although I didn't mean to.
Zille's journalism career flourished as the political correspondent for the Rand Daily Mail, breaking one of the most significant stories of South Africa's history, the truth behind Steve Biko's murder. Sparks was her mentor and editor at the time.
The government didn't like us. The Rand Daily Mail was the most liberal newspaper in the country at the time. It was very controversial in the circumstances, and we had to be very accurate. And I thought she was just about the most accurate journalist I've ever worked with.
When Sparks was fired for attracting a high black readership, Zille left journalism in protest. While running her own business, she became heavily involved in the governing bodies of her son's schools. Zille joined the then Democratic Party, keeping her eye on the education sector. She ended up securing a position as MEC of Education in the Western Cape in 1999.
The fact that she was a journalist, and it was the Rand Daily Mail, which, had great struggle credentials, brought her a lot of political and personal capital with the people who write politics in this country, who are fellow journalists. And so she got a disproportionate amount of attention.
Despite some resistance within the party, Zille planned to take over the Democratic Alliance in 2007. she won the leadership of the party and remained mayor, until 2 years later when she took office as the Premier of the Western Cape. Her former head of communications for the Western Cape government says often it's her way or the highway.
Some leaders, when it comes to, for example, other ideas, other thoughts, will then try to engage with those people with other ideas, try to reach some sort of consensus. That's not Helen's instinct. So I suppose if she does have a fallibility as a leader, it would be in the sense that her instinct is immediately to try and convince you that her ideas are right.
While Zille refutes this, even her supporters say she tends to pick too many fights.
Helen by nature is a fighter for justice, and sometimes I've often wondered whether she needed to enter every fight she's gotten into.
Sometimes people don't agree with my judgment. Sometimes people say you shouldn't have been so confrontational. And sometimes they're right, but often in retrospect, I think I was right.
During her 5-year tenure as the Western Cape Premier, her growing popularity has been attributed to the province's reputation of good governance and efficient service delivery. Zille's opponents often draw attention to the living conditions of those in the townships like Khayelitsha, as proof that she neglects the poor and serves only the rich. The infamous poo protests were the crudest expression of this sentiment. Zille's fobbed them off as political stunts. But interestingly, the opinions of ordinary residents living in Mandela Park, Khayelitsha, are quite divergent on the topic of Zille.
I did vote for Zille. If you see how clean the Cape Town is, because it's Zille, and what I like with Cape Town is the cleanliness.
Leon believes Zille has failed to differentiate the DA from the ANC.
And if you just become a sort of an ANC mini-me, you know, it actually begs the question, you know, so what are you going to do? You're going to provide a country that is simply the ANC minus corruption and with good administration.
But I've been badgering her for years.
In the run-up to these elections, the failed marriage with Nkepile Mabuse was certainly a low point in the party's campaign. Zille's opponents immediately accused her of trying to rent a black for the party's presidential candidate.
But we can keep on building.
On the campaign trail, Zille wears many different hats, sings all sorts of songs, and dances despite the ridicule.
I'm so tired of people pinning a race card to everything. Look, I'm not a great dancer. In fact, I'm a very bad dancer. If people around me are dancing, I'm not going to stand there like a poker, you know, looking on. I'm going to join in and get with the spirit, and that's part of the fun of an election campaign. You get in there, and you jaw, and you dance, and you have a good time.
The number of votes received by Comrade Jacob Zuma, 2,329.
His rise to high office was branded the tsunami, an unstoppable wave that was about to hit South Africa.
I don't even think that he had actually dreamt of being president. He was approached to say, we think that we need your style.
Today, his former praise singers have become his foremost critics, distancing themselves from the aftermath of the tsunami.
I think we sold a wrong product.
At no stage did we ever said, okay, yeah, we are workers organized in COSATU, we want Zuma or someone else to be a leader of the ANC. We have not done that.
To some, he's a divisive force, clinging to the presidency to stay out of jail. But those who continue to support Jacob Zuma say he's misunderstood by the country's middle class and adored by the masses. Perhaps his middle name, Gedlehlekisa, best encapsulates the contradictions that characterize Jacob Zuma. Loosely translated, it means con man, or the one who smiles while stabbing you in the back. And that's exactly what ANC NEC member Bladen Zemande says he thought of Zuma when they first met in the early 1990s. Zuma was the chairperson of the ANC's South Natal region, at the time deployed to help Nelson Mandela quell political violence between the ANC and the IFP.
I thought his smile was fake when he was smiling, you know. And maybe I thought that was in line with his name, Gedlehlekisa, someone who smiles whilst doing other things, you know, behind your back. He's a very genuinely, honestly nice person who enjoys a good laughter. People do not understand why Comrade Zuma is liked by ordinary people, because he's like them.
Born in the now infamous Nkandla village, the president was raised by a single mother who worked in Durban as a domestic worker. His father died at the end of World War II. According to the ANC, he started working at the age of 15 to supplement his mother's income. His childhood friend, Riot Mkwanazi, says Zuma's refusal to throw away his ANC membership card, despite the serious dangers at the time, has stood him in good stead.
Zonke lezi azenzeka kuyena namhlanje naziyimpumelelo. Sibona ubuhle bodwa kodwa thina esalahla amakhati hayi.
The ANC became Zuma's school, his training ground, and his key to high office. After serving 10 years on Robben Island, he went underground, receiving military training in Russia and rapidly rising through the ranks to become the ANC's head of underground structures in 1987.
I was a freedom fighter. I escaped death in many times.
Post-apartheid, Zuma worked mainly behind the scenes, and his star continued to rise.
He's a very skilled negotiator and was really very committed to dealing with violence and looking at multi-pronged strategy rather than a singular strategy. I hear people today say Nelson Mandela, rightly so, Madiba contributed in bringing an end to the violence. But what they forget to say is that it was President Zuma actually who was leading that particular process.
I, Jacob Gedlehlekisa Zuma, swear that I will be faithful to the Republic of South Africa.
But with rising power came accusations of corruption. From the sheikhs to Mandela and now the state, monies channeled for Zuma's benefit have been the subject of investigations for years. To get to the presidency, Zuma controversially escaped corruption charges and overcame an accusation of rape. More personal and professional scandals have followed: adultery, Guptagate, Marigana.
I think the fact that I was a freedom fighter, the fact that I've gone through serious things, in the struggle I knew you have got to meet this, just like in democracy.
Sometimes he laughs, he reads something about him or even some of these cartoons, you know, until tears comes out of his eyes, you know, and saying, the problem is with those people who are so hung up and so much hung up about Jacob Zuma. I'm not worried. It's their problem. It's not my problem.
But accusations that taxpayers funded upgrades at his private home to the tune of nearly R250 million have on at least one occasion revealed that the president is taking strain.
I've been convicted, painted black, called the first-class corrupt man on facts that are not tested. I take exception.
Once described as a unifier, under his leadership, the ANC has splintered, giving birth to COPE and the EFF.
We thought he was a man of the people who enjoys listening to ordinary masses. The opposite was the case. I mean, how do you build a clinic in your yard when the whole community does not have a clinic? A man of the people will go and build a clinic in his community and share it with the community.
Former Minister Ronnie Kasrils, who served with Zuma in the ANC's intelligence structures, says the party is a disgrace under Zuma.
The Nkandla issue has blown up.
but there's a litany of corruption, of abuse of power, and it's been gathering to a tremendous degree these last 5 years.
If you ask Daddy, Daddy, why do you have so many kids? He says, I'm increasing the vote of the ANC.
Despite all the criticism and lampooning, one gets a totally different picture of the president when listening to his children. With 4 wives, 21 children, and the toughest job in the country, they say he still makes time for them.
We've gotten to understand that our dad's not the soccer dad, the one at the PTAs, the enthusiastic father who's overbearing, but he's always managed to be a great father to all of his children. And even growing up, even when it was tough, he was always there for us, somehow managing to balance his life and all the responsibilities that he carried on his shoulders.
On his shoulders, the ANC is expected to secure another landslide victory this election. And its leader is likely to use his 56-year-long history in the organization to fight back those who want him out.
And what if the ANC then says to you, we didn't get 60% for us and we think it's time for you to step down?
No,
will you step down?
It is the ANC, not an individual.
Yes, I'm talking about the ANC. What if the ANC then said, Mr. President, thank you very much, but
the
we
ANC
didn't...
can't say so.
Why?
Because the ANC would have been part of whatever else has been done in the collective. It can't say so. It can't, when it gets 60, then turn around and say it is an individual who made us in order to achieve. It is the ANC. The ANC will have to look at itself. Just as if the ANC wins, it is the ANC that wins, it's not an individual. We don't individualize things in the ANC.
Whether you vote with your head or your heart, Time magazine believes there's one woman you can rely on to hold your leaders to account. It's a star-studded event held at the Lincoln Center in New York, where our own public protector walked the red carpet with international celebrities and some of the most influential people in the world, according to Time magazine.
We are honored to be able to shine a light on your accomplishments and on the promise and the many contributions that you have all made to civilization.
The list is compiled by Time journalists, an institution started 91 years ago and that today boasts a readership of 25 million. In acknowledging Madonsela, Time described her as an inspirational example of what African public officers need to be. Madonsela is also receiving a lot of attention on the continent. In Kenya, they've compared Nkandla to their former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's home in the port city of Kisumu. In Nigeria, columnist Emeka Umeje accused the country of failing to investigate its own Nkandlas.
I'm grateful that there's been some recognition of my small contribution. It has also placed a burden to make sure that I don't disappoint particularly the women in the continent and the young girls.
10 Africans were recognized by Time this year, and on the list were 8 black women, from Beyonce to Nigeria's finance minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. US President Barack Obama, Pope Francis, and whistleblower Edward Snowden also made the list. Did you have any idea how big a deal this was?
It was a bit of a shock to my system, I must say. Yes, there were lots of cameras, lots of questions, and as I was getting shocked, I had to do whatever I was being asked to do. It was only when we were seated at the tables that we started reflecting on what had just happened, and realized that we had survived it.
That's Checkpoint this week. I'm Nkepile Mabuse. Thanks for watching.